Hello, everybody, and welcome on Inside the Browns Beat. I'm Michael Keefe. He is Fred Greetham, and you are joining us live here tonight on the OBR streaming network, the Orange and Brown Report. Before we even get going with our show in there's some news to talk about here on the show tonight. But before we get going, I got the QR code up. Just snap it with your phone. Get over to the OBR.com. Make sure you hit subscribe. The OBR, the Orange and Brown Report, is the oldest, largest independent Browns coverage site in all of Cleveland. And so you want to be a part of it as well. You get to read some of the best Browns coverage articles. You get to take part in the forums, which is always a good time with thousands of other Browns fans. You get to hang out with us on the video editions and so much more. So get over to the OBR.com and hit subscribe today. All right, we got a great show here. Again, like I said, there's some news going on with the Browns. We'll get into that a little bit. We will talk about just a little bit of what's happened since last week when we talked about the Browns, and we'll look ahead. We know some of those top 30 visits. We obviously have an idea of maybe the direction they're looking in the draft all of a sudden. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about here tonight. So we are very, very glad you're here. Also, before we get going, be a part of the show. Get into the comments. If you're here with us on Twitch, YouTube, wherever you're watching, get in the comments. If you got questions, if you got topics, whatever you want to talk about, we'll bring it up here and we'll do our best to stay with it. So welcome in Inside the Browns Beat. Let's have a great show. Fred, how's it going, sir? A little Browns news coming in as we get ready for the show tonight.
Yeah, I was just trying to update a couple moves. Browns in the last 10 minutes have signed their first wide receiver. Might be more of a special teams, but if I remember right, he burned the Browns this year. Tylan Wallace from the Ravens. Just looking quickly, he averaged 16 yards a punt return and like 24 yards kick return. He didn't have many catches, but he did have a 45-yard touchdown. I don't know if that was against the Browns. It seemed like for some reason it was against the Browns.
But, I'm sorry, was it the Ravens? Yeah, it was against the Browns. It's fine.
And maybe they knew the show was coming on because I was going to talk about him here. One of their biggest needs was wide receiver, and they hadn't signed one. And just before that, I confirmed with a league source that they signed a defensive end, edge rusher, AJ Epinesa, I think you pronounce it, from the Bills. Had a pretty good career with the Bills. He had 24 sacks. He's only 27 years old. Last year had 2.5 is all. I didn't look in see if he missed time, but the 3 previous years, 22, 23, and 24, he had at least 6 sacks each season. So got some more depth for the defensive line. So those just happened in the last 15 minutes. I got wind and I confirmed with a source, both of them. In fact, I didn't even ask about the wide receiver, said we have another one too. So that's some positive news. We're going to talk about the moves and we can add these guys to the pile.
Did you say they have another one?
Well, 2 is all I knew. I came on here. I haven't heard of another one. The other one was when I was confirming.
Got it.
Said we have another one. Tylan Wallace.
Yeah, listen. Here's the thing, though. We're going to start getting into these, and there's probably going to be a few of them. Let's start with Tylan Wallace. Obviously, Todd Monken knows him. Obviously, some of the coaches that came with Todd Monken know him. And I believe he's 5 years in. I think both of these guys actually are 5 years in. There's a familiarity there. I wouldn't anticipate a lot of Tylan Wallace on the offensive side of the football. I think he in his 5-year career has like 20 catches, right? He's not really an offensive player, but he's been a pretty good special teamer for Baltimore. And frankly, Fred, there are some things that can be adjusted, fixed, repaired, whatever with the Cleveland Browns by just finding competence. And one of the areas that can be fixed and adjusted to the positive when it comes to the Cleveland Browns is, can a guy catch a punt? Can a guy simply field a punt? Or maybe catch it in the right area or let it bounce instead of catching it at the 2-yard line or whatever. The Browns have really struggled with that in recent history. And so for them to bring in a guy like Tylan Wallace, that I would imagine is what they anticipate from him, is to come in and be a return guy and maybe even play, maybe as a gunner or something like that on kick coverage.
The incumbent's Gage Lavardane, undrafted free agent. He had some flashes in preseason, but you throw him out there after DeAndre Carter got hurt and he struggled. He muffed a punt or two, cost him. I can think of one that I think cost him the game. But yeah, this guy, this is what he's done predominantly for the Ravens, and I think he's been very successful. If that career average is correct, that I thought I just looked around 16, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
The Andrew Berry has tried to solve that problem for about 5 years, and I hate to put the kiss of death on this guy, but every one of them were lost for the season when they went out and signed, free agents just to be that guy. Guys like Jakeem Grant and JoJo Matson.
Yep.
And then DeAndre Carter. Before that, Naeem Hines. He never even got on the field with the Browns.
Yeah, that was
so. It was like every one of them got hurt in preseason, and so Wallace has been durable. He's played, like you said, like 5 years, and he's got 14, 15 games, listed every year. So that, like you say, that can solve two problems with one, and it can't hurt to have speed. The number one thing about this guy, I believe, is speed. And, if he can upgrade those areas right now, they ended the season with Gage Lavardane listed as the returner at punt, and Dylan Sampson, kick returner, and Jerome Ford did that by default. They were always playing with a backup plan, James Prochet. It was always filling guys for the guys that got hurt. So it'd be nice to just have a pure specialist. But if this guy can enter and just do some, gadget plays and stuff, Monken, I think, likes to do stuff like that. And he used Keaton Mitchell. If they can use this guy, in his speed to stretch the field, great.
Yeah, and again, if he's just a special teams player, I think that's perfectly fine too. You got a new special teams coach. They've brought in what's the safety's name that played for Detroit and Jacksonville that they brought in?
Daniel Thomas.
Daniel Thomas, special teams ace. They're trying to rebuild. I will say though, if you were doing prop bets, I think the leader in the clubhouse has to be Tylan Wallace at this point for which wide receiver are Browns fans going to fall in love with during training camp next year, who really isn't. It was Gage Lavardane last year, and then he got into real football action, and you went, oh, wait a minute. Or Luke Floria, or it feels like, what was that guy? Was it Austin Watkins a few years ago? Everybody just fell in love with. I would say Tylan Wallace has a great shot to be training camp guy that the fans think is going to be like a great wide receiver that you're probably never going to see as a wide receiver. But again, I think the Browns, when it comes to that kind of stuff, Malachi Corley, I really like the way they used him last year, and I hope they do that again. I really think he's got a burst that plays in the NFL regular season games. But again, if Tylan Wallace can just be a pretty good special teams player, a pretty good returner, obviously Todd Monken trusts him. Again, he wasn't a special teams coach, but man, you have to trust those special teams guys because they're trying to set your offense up for success. So obviously Todd Monken trusts him, and they bring him in. If he's good at special teams, that'll be a massive improvement for the Cleveland Browns as opposed to what we saw last year, the year before that, the year before that. It's been rough on special teams from a return standpoint for years now.
That's the thing that stands out. But, as far as it might been with Monken, he might have seen something in practice and said, look, and this might have been, money always factors in, and maybe that's the reason, but they might have really talked to him, said, look, we see situations you can play stretch the field as a wide receiver. And, and that might have been appealing to him. But like you said, I have to think the primary role would be kick and punt return, and that would be in itself, a godsend for the Browns. That was one of the points I wanted to talk about tonight briefly, is that they brought back Trey Avery. They brought back D'Angelo Ross. They brought back, or they went out and signed today, Daniel Thomas. And I was going to say Corey Bahork was the punter who was here, but now here you got Tylan Wallace. Those are a concerted effort, like what I would call core special teams players. And they did that in previous years. But last year, I remember they didn't seem to do that because there was always the Mike Fords, I can't remember names off the top of my head, but guys that just were special teams aces.
Yes.
And they didn't really have 2 or 3 of them that's like all they did. And it showed. That was part of the reason I think it showed, because you had some rookies and first-year players maybe never played special teams before, and they made a breakdown, and it cost the Browns a game. So whether these guys make the team or not, but Ross ended the season kind of a core special teams. He wasn't with them until the end of the year. Same way with Avery. And if these guys can be core special teams players along with Wallace and the guy they got today, that's all he is. Danny Thomas is like a core player in that. And so they have to make the team. But if they make the team, maybe Byron Storr saw that and says, look, I need some core. That's all they do. They're on all the special teams. Sure, they got to be an emergency corner, emergency safety, but that's what they do. So I do think you can see the theme of offensive line, obviously, and then special teams upgrades. And so far in free agency, I mean, these aren't big contracts. These are 1 year, guys. But by bringing Ross and Avery back, I'm not so much sure they brought them back as defensive backs other than backups, but more so those core special teams type guys.
Fred, you brought it up. Before we get to the next signing, I'm going to kind of jump into you. We're really focusing on special teams, which is kind of fun, actually. But you brought this up, and I'm going to tell you, I was kind of surprised. The swiftness at which it happened. But you brought up that the Browns are bringing back Corey Bojorquez, and he's had a pretty solid career here. But I was a little surprised how fast they made the decision to bring him back, because while he's had his pretty solid moments here, I think the last 2 years, 2 years ago wasn't great. And I think last year was kind of rough for Bojorquez. I was a lot disappointed. No offense to the guy, seems like a good guy, but just in the on-field stuff, it felt like if you needed a 60-yard boot, he can give you a 60-yard boot. But it also felt like if you needed like a 35-yard punt, he could give you a 60-yard boot. And that is pretty much what it is. I anticipated them to maybe look around to see what other punt options were available. Were you surprised how fast they brought Bojorquez back?
It seemed like there was a little flurry of punter signings. I remember, it seemed like they got some kind of double check, what did they get that guy? I think the Ravens, extended their punter, and there was 2 or 3. So I don't know if those were options they were thinking of going after. I was told, a source told me that they thought Bojorquez, the last they heard, he was going to sign with the Titans. That's what I was told.
Yeah.
And then like the next day he signed with the Browns. So I don't know. I know he liked it here. He's started his family here and so forth on the personal side. So I don't know if they, what the factors all came in, but you're right. I mean, sometimes you don't feel like he has touch. He just booms it, it's like, so now Byron Storr, the new special teams coach, when we were introduced to him, he talked about a lot of the special teams guys, and I'd have to look at the transcript, but my takeaway, I didn't feel like he was enamored with Bajorquez. I felt like he wasn't like going, man, he's awesome. We got to get him back. Or unless he was just doing coach speak, knowing he was a free agent, looking elsewhere. I don't know. But I didn't really get the idea. I don't remember him saying, hopefully we can get Corey back, or hopefully we really got to have him, or anything like that. So I was a little surprised, to be honest, because it was a pretty good source told me he's leaning to go to the Titans. That's the last I had heard.
Well, he's back and he's going to have a new coach, and maybe that'll be a big time focus is trying to get some of that back in line. Also, though, another signing, and I find this one to be interesting when you look at the numbers. I don't want to go overboard with my thoughts here, but you brought up the AJ Epinesa signing. He was a guy that I think just finished his 5th year in Buffalo. And you
He's
brought
27.
you brought up some of the numbers. Defensive end, his rookie year played bits and pieces here and there, but then his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year, he averaged more than 6 sacks for each of those seasons. Last year, the sack numbers down a little bit, but the pressure numbers were pretty good still for Epinesa. And I think you would say for the Bills, at best, he was a good situational pass rusher. But for a guy that's a situational pass rusher to be getting 6.5, 7 sacks a season, that's pretty good. And when you look at his numbers, just from a usage perspective, he's a guy that averaged about 40% of the snaps. He played in about 40% of the snaps for the Bills, which tells you, they were not real comfortable having him in there on rushing downs, first down, that situation. They didn't really love that situation. But when he was in there, he was effective. He also had a pretty good, I don't remember what the number was, but a pretty good amount of tip passes. So he's good at kind of just being disruptive in the backfield on passing downs. I see a couple of things here. It just in the few minutes since this was announced, I've seen some people that cover the Browns linking this to being similar as the Joe Tryon-Shoyinka signing, which basically just amounted to nothing. And then I've seen other people say, well, maybe the Browns are planning on giving him a little bit more of a little bit heavier workload to see if potentially those percentages and numbers can translate with it. And instead of getting a 6-sack guy in 40% of the snaps, you give him some more snaps and you get an 8, 9, 10-sack guy. So just preliminary thoughts, Fred, on AJ Epinesa.
Well, obviously, defensive line was important with Jim Schwartz. Mike Rutenberg said it was important for him, and it's a position of strength. And I applaud them to not sit back and saying, hey, we're set there, because as soon as you do that, it seems like somebody goes down and then you're scrambling again. They did lose Cameron Thomas to free agency, and I think he was about pretty much a solid number 4. I'd take this guy right off the bat. He has more numbers already than, as far as pass rusher, than Cameron Thomas. You talked about Tryon-Shoyinka. I think Cameron Thomas kind of moved into that role, and they felt they were just as well off with him, and so that's why they traded. I don't know. At first glance here, without really diving in, I don't know what the reason his numbers dropped a little bit. He still, as you said, was in, but he appeared in 14 games. So I think in that depth or what they're looking, Garrett, they signed right to a big contract. So those are your starters. McGuire's in his last year, I believe, rookie contract, or maybe it's 3rd year. I'm not sure. But at least if this guy can be your 3rd or 4th guy and give you that situational pass rush, like I said, I mean, averaging 6 sacks the previous 3 years or better. Last year, behind Garrett had the 23, but second was Malik Collins with 6, and he missed the last 1/3 of the season, or at least 1/4 of the season. So they weren't getting the big production out of any other ends other than Myles Garrett. So this guy can chip in with 6. I think they'd take that in a heartbeat.
I think this is also a good point from BCS20 in the comments. Says that his rookie year in Buffalo was with our current defensive line coach, Jacques Césaire, which is right here. So yeah, he was an assistant defensive line coach in Buffalo. So that a little familiarity there. And obviously coach probably had a little say in that, saying, hey, if you can get this guy, I really liked it. I liked his potential in Buffalo. Then he obviously went and put up the numbers. And that sometimes you think, and here's another great point from Heinz 3333. His pressure rate last year was right around Alex Wright. So not bad, even though his sack numbers were down, he was still getting pressure. Sometimes you do. Sometimes I know we all like to dive so deep into things, but sometimes you just let the numbers show you that a guy is productive, even if he's not on the field all the time. I would say this, I would caution, I don't know that I want to call this the Joe Tryon Shoyinka move, because that never really turned into anything. And that's like the ultimate doom and gloom. It's going to be bad because it's the Browns kind of thing that people like to do. But I also would probably caution people. He's productive in his role in Buffalo, right? He's getting those 6 sacks and 40% of the snaps, getting 6.5, 7 sacks. That's great. But that doesn't mean if you increase him up to 80% of the snaps that he's going to wind up with 13, 14 sacks on the season. He may just be really good at his situation and what he does. And if that's the case, again, Fred, I think it's an upgrade. I think it's an upgrade. I think it's a depth piece that is better than a depth piece that we had last year. And I think that's a good move.
Yeah, I agree, and not sitting back on the defense because that was the strength. Like last week I said, I thought Devin Bush deserved to be a priority, but when it's all said and done, we'll have to see what he does on the field. But I think Quincy Williams can be an upgrade. I think he has a higher ceiling than Bush, and fits right like a glove into this defense. So, and he's excited to be here and playing with Rutenberg, and Rutenberg knows how to push his buttons, and he had his 4 biggest years. So, yeah, when you said Jacques Césaire, I know the defensive linemen love him, and this could be a guy that he can push his buttons and get out of that again. What's happening now is, like I said, we had the 2 right before we came on the show, 2 signings. They're probably both 1 year, maybe 2 year with first year guarantees, but I'm sure they got a lot of 1 year offers out there.
Yes.
And guys are looking to see if they have any better options or whatever, and then picking and choosing. And so these are kind of that second, third wave where these aren't big risk. They're kind of like a prove it contract. And, and if, like you said, if he can upgrade the pass rush, that's great. If Wallace can upgrade the return game, and that's all he did, that would be great. And like we talked about Williams, it looks like, in the offensive line that, that was their intent as well. So we'll have to see how it all works out. But as far as they're addressing specific needs right now, and, I don't see a downside to it, to be honest.
The other thing everybody's talking about tonight, this was also something tweeted out. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts, Fred, on this. This was tweeted out by Adam Schefter. One of the new bylaws that was proposed by the Cleveland Browns to be, I guess, voted on or whatever in the NFL is that the Cleveland Browns have proposed that teams in the NFL should be allowed. Right now, you can trade draft picks up to 3 years into the future. The Cleveland Browns have asked the NFL, they've petitioned the NFL to change that so that you can trade draft picks up to 5 years into the future. And so they want to be able to trade an extra 5 picks. And there's a lot of funny stuff going on right now online. I beg you to go check out X and look at what some of the funny Cleveland Browns tweeters or creators or whatever are saying about this. But what impact do you think this has? Where do you think this is coming from, Fred? That they want to be able to trade draft picks up to 5 years into the future. We've got some people saying that they think it's related to Myles Garrett. Like, hey, if you can give us your next 5 years worth of first round picks, we'll give you Myles Garrett. I don't know about that. Other people are saying Jimmy's already going all in on Arch Manning. And he wants to trade 5 years of draft picks.
Oh boy.
I don't know. Where does this stem from?
Yeah, I really don't know. It's an interesting take. My first thought was something to do with the Watson thing, like if they could have extended him out further or something, the losses instead of just 3 years, but you might end up having still be without a first round pick. So, I mean, the Browns, everybody's looking at it with a jaundiced eye because it's the Browns saying, well, they are trying, they're up to something. I don't know. It might come into somewhat the way they seem to have been the leader with our early pioneers of voidable years and pushing down the road. And I don't know, that looking into the future aspect, because it seems like now maybe it was going on. I mean, Jack Duffin would know more, but because he watches this, it puts me to sleep. But as far as the aspect of, you see all these teams more and more explaining in the thing, well, we've restructured and it seemed like it was just the Browns doing that 2 or 3 years ago. Now it's like everybody's doing it and kind of repositioning things so they can stay under the cap. But I do think that the Browns are thinking kind of a lot of those things progressively. They were thinking about, they've often made what are you going to say, suggestions or bring up things like Andrew Berry promoted, moving the trade deadline back a week or two, and they did that. And that was the Browns. So, yeah.
Well, I like this point. Charlie Chuck said it. It allows teams to maybe not have to trade 3 consecutive first-round picks. If you wanted to make a big splash trade for a all-pro type quarterback, or, if somebody wanted to come after Myles Garrett, instead of saying we're going to give you our next 3 years worth of number ones, maybe it's next year's number one, the year after that, and then maybe like 5 years down the road. I do think that is that makes a lot of sense. So thanks to Charlie.
It would make sense with the Browns knowing what that Watson trade, with everything else, the 3 straight ones, if they could have even extended it, or skipped a year or something, it would have helped them, because I mean, those 3 number ones should be starters on this team right now. And if you put them on the offensive side, you probably solve some of the problems that you're still chasing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll see. We'll see if that's a thing. That it seems to very specifically target big, humongous, major things. So it's a very interesting concept, but a lot of people talking about it online for sure. All right. So I do want to get a little bit into, as we kind of hit the halfway point of the show, I want to start looking a little bit forward now that we know they're starting to just fill out the roster. But I think they're doing it with good players like these guys. A lot of people will call it roster filling. I think I saw that in the comments, and it is, but they're doing it with pretty good players. These are guys that have had success. As we hit the halfway point, just a couple notes. One, I love this comment from Sancho Bermuda. April 23rd is the NFL draft in Pittsburgh, and Sancho is looking forward to OBR coverage, and you better believe that you are going to get OBR coverage. We will go wall to wall with NFL draft coverage. I have already told my wife and my children, do not anticipate seeing me for a whole bunch of time on those 3 beautiful days where we bring you all the coverage from the OBR during the NFL draft. So just make sure you got your stuff situated for that. We'll lay down the ground rules. I know it's always a big topic of conversation with the draft. What are we going to do? How are we going to talk about the picks? When are we going to tip the picks? All that. We'll get into it. We'll talk about it. But yes, OBR draft coverage will be live. It'll be the draft cave as it was last year. And we'll be going all throughout the NFL draft. So we are excited that you guys are excited as well. Also, just a little programming note here, as we are about halfway through Inside the Browns Beat. Make sure you stay tuned at 9:00 for the Garage Beers podcast tonight. I'll be back with Chad, with Joe. We are going to talk a little bit about hockey because the Columbus Blue Jackets are on a tear right now. They're on an absolute tear. So we got our buddy, the Rinkside Reporter for FanDuel our buddy Dave Metzold is going to come on and join us to talk a little hockey, but we're also going to talk Browns. We're going to talk about World Baseball Classic was awesome. And we're going to do a March Madness bracket, and it's going to be a good time. So 9 o'clock, get your beer, come back for Garage Beers. Fred, one of the coolest things that we've got going on, and you can check on this if you become a member at theobr.com, if you subscribe. But in our kind of rumor central, there's a list of confirmed top 30 visits that the Cleveland Browns have got going. And so, again, these are all, I should have checked on this before we got into, these are all things that are known. This is just a tracker. But the Cleveland Browns, as the last I looked, have almost 10, I think, top 30 visits scheduled. And I think it gives you a pretty good look at how the Browns are maybe approaching this draft. And if you're somebody like me, Fred, you really like the way this pre-draft top 30 visit tracker is looking. And so, Fred, do you have the names? I have it pulled up here if you want me to read it. Do you have the names?
No, I don't. I mean, okay. I was just going off memory, but there was 4 or 5 wide receivers.
Mm-hmm. So I'll give you the list right now. We have 9 that we know of. Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver out of Arizona State. Carnell Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. And Mekhi Lemon, the wide receiver out of USC. Those are the obvious top 3 wide receivers in this draft. They are all scheduled to come visit Cleveland for a top 30 visit. Ty Simpson, the quarterback from Alabama, is on the board for a visit. Markel Bell, the offensive tackle for Miami. I know everybody's talking about Francis Mauangoa, but Markel Bell, the offensive tackle for Miami, is on the list. R. Mason Thomas, I think, is just a name you all need to watch. I think it's just one of the names you need to watch because I think if he's on the board at a certain pick for the Browns, they are going to take him. They seem like they love him. He is an edge out of Oklahoma. I know they just signed an edge. I don't think that would prevent them from going after R. Mason Thomas, so keep an eye on him. He's coming in for a top 30 visits. And then 2 more wide receivers, Omar Cooper from Indiana. Chris Bell is he's like the bell of the ball for me. No pun intended. I love Chris Bell. I will talk more about him as we get closer to the draft. The wide receiver out of Louisville coming off of an injury. He is on the list. And then the last one that we know of on the list, Emmanuel McNeil Warren, the safety from Toledo, a heck of a football player. So those are the 9 players that we know right now are coming in for top 30 visits. I think Chris Bell actually already had his. I think he was here today, yesterday. I don't know. He was here. But certainly I am Mr. Get these stud wide receivers in the draft because you can't do it in free agency with the way these contracts go. And it looks like they are loading up these top 30 visits with wide receivers, Fred.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, the biggest question to me is what are you going to do at left tackle? Certainly you're not just going to, you got everything but the left tackle, at least on paper, through free agency and trades. And I would think Andrew Berry learned the lesson that you cannot count on DeJuan Jones. All 3 years he's got hurt and ended on injury reserve. He would be on the roster right now as the left tackle, and I think KT Leviston. But I really didn't expect them to go into free agency and attack that to solve that problem because the tackles, especially the left tackles, end up usually getting a fortune. But I wanted to bring up to you and see what you think about, is that the perceived number 1 free agent left tackle was Rasheed Walker from the Packers. And a lot of reports had him about middle of the road, average starter, but assumed he was going to get top of the line payday because of what Dan Moore did last year. The guy from the Steelers got a massive contract in free agency. Well, anyway, Walker signs for 1 year. It reported at the beginning 1 year, $10 million. Today it came out when the contract 1 year, $4 million guaranteed with incentives up to $10 million. I would have thought the Browns might have, done that at 1 year for $10 million. But 1 year for $4 million, at least you would have kind of on paper had all your, positions filled. And then you truly could not worry about getting the left tackle. you still could draft one, but you didn't have to for sure take one. You could take that best player available, wide receiver at 6, or Caleb Downs or whoever. So I was a little curious about that. What's your thoughts on why you think they passed on Rasheed Walker, especially when Elton Jenkins said he was talking to him and trying to get him to come here?
Well, and I think Fred, I think it's just, I think getting caught into a trap a little bit. I don't know that they passed on him. They might have offered him a similar contract. He might have just chosen to go to Carolina. I mean, that's every time I see a player that I kind of like for the Browns choose to go somewhere else, or a player get traded somewhere, it's always the first 10 comments is, the Browns should have done that. Oh, the Browns should have done that. I saw one of the Browns reporters talking about, they should. I can't believe they didn't do that. Well, it doesn't mean they didn't try to do it. Doesn't mean they didn't.
Yeah.
It was reported that they had interest. And so obviously they were talking. He might have wanted to go to Carolina. There might have been other reasons behind it. He might have liked Carolina's situation better. Again, I think sometimes we assume that just because his teammate was like, come to Cleveland with me, doesn't mean he's going to want to come to Cleveland. It doesn't mean, and it doesn't mean anything good or bad or indifferent. It's just he probably had a handful of options that threw in contracts, and he decided to go to. I just never get caught up in. I don't assume.
Well, yeah.
I don't
Absolutely.
assume that they didn't go to make that deal. I think they probably did, and he picked Carolina, and that is what it is.
I'm just assuming they didn't choose to overpay the guy. Most free agent guys that I've seen go to the biggest contract, but maybe Browns wouldn't go above what he already had offered. And yeah, I fully understand. Carolina just won their division and seems more on the rise. So yeah, that we're not privy to know who they went after, who they didn't go after, and they never comment on those things for obvious reasons. So yeah, I mean, points taken there. You looked, it was so lean, and you just thought, okay, well, he's not the greatest, but at least you'd have a starter. But maybe they just chose it feeling like, hey, whatever happens, we can come out of the draft with one guy that we feel better about, and you have him under control.
Again, I think it'll just kind of tell you, get ready for what to anticipate in the draft. But there's still a couple players out there, available left tackle players that are pretty okay. Not awesome, not bad. But I certainly think the Browns could put a call in for Taylor Decker, who is no longer going to be with the Detroit Lions. I don't think he's great. He's not bad, though. He's certainly, again, it's been my mantra this entire offseason. He certainly could be a good player on a great line. I think he could fit that mold pretty well. I also think another guy to really keep your eye on. I cannot believe that the Cleveland Browns wouldn't have some level of interest or connection with Joe Noteboom, the tackle from Baltimore. Again, coming from Todd Monken, and maybe I think he's 30. So he's obviously getting up there a little bit as far, and I know that sounds stupid. He's getting up there as far as just being an NFL player is concerned. But if you need a kind of a 1-2 year contract kind of guy, if there's still guys like that they can go after that can be starters for the Browns this year.
Well, you kind of brought that topic up, is that, we got the idea that we're getting younger on the offensive line and so forth. But when you look at it, that's not exactly the case. I mean, Elton Jenkins is 30. He's an 8th year guy. Titus Howard will be 30. He's an 8th year guy. Zion Johnson's coming off the first, so he's like 26. But I do agree that you want experience with your offensive line, but kind of the idea was we had this old aged line you got to get rid of. And Wyatt Teller's like 31, and so, okay, if they feel these guys are better, but now it's not like they're getting all 25-year-olds. And if they were to bring in Taylor Decker, you'd have a 32-year-old at left tackle, and and so you do want a good, cohesive, solid line, and those guys can play longer. It's just it's not exactly what you were thinking they were gonna. And you can't do that. You can't draft 5 rookies to be the offensive line. That's the only way
Right.
you truly get young. The Zion Johnsons is kind of what you were thinking more of, but some of these other guys, there's a guy, I don't know if Jawan Taylor signed with anybody. He got cut by the Chiefs in a salary cap move. But yeah, there's a couple guys out there. It'd just be interesting to see if they bring in a perceived starter to play left tackle, or they just wait for the draft and see if they get somebody then, and then pick up what I call kind of backfill positions. The Browns have done that in the past. They wait till the draft's over and, oh, we didn't, and then bring in a guy or two. I remember Malcolm Smith, he was not on any roster, and they got to training camp that summer, and he was on, and they signed him, and he was the second leading tackler.
Yep.
Shelby Harris, kind of the same thing. He was on nobody's team. Browns were in Greenbrier a week. They come back. They sign him. It was like Schwartz said, I got to go get another guy, and so they have a short list at every position. So a lot of time for that to happen. So it's
but I do think when we're sitting here talking about left tackles, I think what you will be able to kind of decipher from this, at least in my opinion. Now, maybe not. Maybe they go, hey, listen, we can't fix this entire offensive line in one offseason. And the way the draft falls, maybe it's not. Maybe we're going to go in with DeJuan Jones and KT Levison or whatever at left tackle and just see what happens. That could happen. It's a hard thing to overhaul it in 1 year. I do think, though, certainly a much greater chance. I think if they were to sign a guy like Noteboom or Decker, it does not preclude them at all from taking a left tackle, even at 6. I don't think that even matters. However, if they don't sign a left tackle, I would be surprised if they didn't, with one of those first 3 picks, come away with a guy they think could play left tackle for the Browns. So I think it's an interesting thing to watch. I think it's going to help us kind of determine how we think they're going to look at the draft. But go back to that list, Fred, because a lot of guys that are viewed as, they have all 3 guys at wide receiver that are viewed as the top tier receiver prospects: Jordan Tyson and Carnell Tate and Mekhi Lemon. They're all scheduled to come in for a visit. And then they've got a solid grouping of the next kind of group of wide receivers between Omar Cooper and Chris Bell and that group. And I wonder if there's not going to be more added, guys like Casey Concepcion and Denzel Boston, I don't think was on there. So I wonder if some more guys aren't going to be added. But again, in my opinion, Fred, now that they've done just what they've done on the line to this point, I am all about let's go take one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the NFL and turn it into one of the better wide receiver rooms. I think you can do that in the draft. I would love to see 2 of the top 3 picks be wide receivers in this draft. I would love to see it. And it looks like at least they're gearing up. I'm not going to say this is what they're going to do, because I think if they've got another player they really rate highly, they'll go for it. But it looks like they're maybe setting up for that as well.
I agree, because I'm just so done with the 3rd round and under guys that you like them, but they're not. I know nobody's a surefire, but I saw something the other day. Somebody put a chart of all the number 1 picks that were wide receivers. And it was like, if they were in the top 10, it was over 75% that they were players. They hit on them. If it was outside the top 10, it dropped way down, like even in the first round, down to like 26% when you're looking at the 24th pick or something like that. So I agree. I think they need at least 2 wide receivers. I thought they'd get 1 in free agency. And I'm not talking about a Deontay Johnson or a guy that, is just sitting out there hoping to revive his career. I'm talking about a legitimate guy that comes in to be in your rotation. And so I think if you got to get 2 wide receivers, and you alluded to it, I think was it the same draft that the Bengals got Chase and Higgins, or was it 1 year apart? But you have to pay them, if they become free agents. And that's why wide receiver is so expensive. It's right up there with, getting like quarterbacks. So you got to draft them because you get 4 or 5 years with those 2 first-round picks. You get 5 years with those guys. You just got to make the right choices. But I definitely would want them to come out with one of those top 3 and not hope, draft
Yes.
somebody lower and say, well, we hope he's pretty good, but we got the guys we got already on the team. I think they overplayed that last year. I thought they needed a receiver, and they were counting on Tillman to break out. And, the only addition they made was Isaiah Bond, and that wasn't until training camp after, they didn't draft him, so they very easily could not have even had him. So, yeah, I just think that I like that. I don't know. I haven't done this, but I've seen guys have done this, track the top 30 visits and how many they actually draft. I don't know the Browns' history, how many they actually draft that they bring in. I actually have heard intel that sometimes they're just making a file. So when the guy becomes a free agent, they already know what he's about, and he knows them or something. So who knows? But yeah, I like what I've seen, that the bigger names have all been in there. And usually when you're picking as high as the Browns, all the guys that are, projected to be top 10 would be part of that. And I don't know if we've heard the names of too many others than Tate, Lemon,
Tyson.
No,
and that'll also be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if you see. Again, I don't know that it's going to say anything because I think sometimes you just bring in the top players to get to know them a little bit. It'll be interesting to see if you saw like an Arvell Reese pop onto the list for a visit, or some of the guys that aren't being talked about. I will say right off the bat, some noticeable names missing from the list. They do have the one offensive tackle from Miami, Markel Bell, but no Spencer Fano, no Francis Mauangoa, no Monroe Freeling, really just the one offensive lineman. So I would imagine as they fill out the rest of that top 30, and they still got, 21 more to go, but I'd imagine that'll start filling up with offensive linemen as well. It'll fill up with all positions, but I think you're going to see some of those top offensive linemen on there as well.
Yeah, there's espionage, too. Oh, they brought in this or that, trying to play head games too. Arvell Reese, I think they have something that if you're from the area, you don't count, So he went to Glenville, I think. I think he could count as a local guy, And so, yeah, I expect to hear some bigger names coming in. I think last year, Abdul Carter, all those guys ended up having visits. Plus, they visited a lot of them over there in Indianapolis. So some of them feel, well, we might not need to. Other ones, there's strategy involved. Okay, we only have so many. Let's see these guys and go from there. So, yeah, it's hopeful at least. It makes you feel like they're looking on the same page, especially with the absence of any additions this far into free agency at wide receiver. I mean, like we talked about, Wallace, I would say he's a return guy until I hear different.
This is another, and this is not to call Turtle out by any stretch, but this is a question I have for you, Fred, and I think it'd be another fascinating look. Turtle just put this in the comment because a lot of people falling in love with Monroe Freeling from Georgia. He had his pro day today. And I saw this a lot. The Browns didn't send anyone that matters to Freeling's pro day at Georgia. The Browns did send 2 scouts to the pro day at Georgia. Does it matter? I don't know. I would love to see this is another thing I would love to see some data on is, does it matter whether it's Andrew Berry there? Does it matter whether, these guys have jobs for a reason, right? So if the Browns send 2 scouts to a guy's pro day, it certainly means they are gathering intelligence on that guy. And I don't think it really matters who's there. I think it just matters that people from the Browns are there, right?
Yeah, I would guess it gets, you always remember the trackers on the quarterbacks, even last year, everybody and their brother was on a private plane to see Shedeur Sanders.
Yes.
They're probably really there to see Travis Hunter, but
right.
Yeah, it's hard to really know. like I say, sometimes, we've the Browns have drafted guys where they said, I've never even talked to the Browns. I had no idea they were interested in me.
Right.
And then there's other guys that said, oh, I was sure they were drafting me because they were all over me. They were calling me all the time, checking with me all the time. So I think some of it is strategy, but some of it is, maybe they didn't put the work in thinking that person wouldn't be available to them. But I wouldn't read a lot into it with Freeling. I mean, as far as, I don't know. Yeah, a lot of people now think he would go 6 overall to the Browns if the other two were gone. Who knows? But I'm sure they're going to do their homework, and to say that somebody isn't high up just because they're maybe not Andrew Berry, he can't go everywhere. I don't know. Was that the whole Georgia or just this guy? Because I would think there's a lot of prospects at Georgia. There's a wide receiver from Georgia. There's a lot of different guys. And I would think
sure.
they'd be looking at all those potential.
I think it's, for me, I think it's just a good reminder to everybody that the scouting network is national. It's not just a couple guys in a room talking like they're just kind of random. It's not like Draft Day, the movie, where there's like 4 people in the draft room and Kevin Costner's being weird. It's a national scouting network. They have people all over the country, and that's what they do. And so I do think Fumble raises a good question. Are these the area scouts that have already seen him, or are they other scouts confirming? We don't know. I have no idea. But believe me when I tell you that the Browns very much take into play what their scouts say. I will never forget being I was on an airplane pre-draft. I don't remember how many years ago. Well, it was the year Sione Takitaki was drafted. And I sat next to one of the Browns scouts from out west. And his job was BYU was in his area. So he scouted heavily Sione Takitaki. And I remember he told me, he said, that's the guy I want them to pick. He said, I will make sure they know that he's my number one guy that I want them to pick. And obviously Takitaki had a nice little run of a career here in Cleveland, but they listen to the scouts. These are not just Joe Schmoes. It doesn't matter if Andrew Berry goes or doesn't go. If a scout calls and says, you got to get this guy, it'll definitely come into play when it comes to draft time. I think it's just important to remember, because I think it's too much now in information overload society. We get this information of, well, who was there? Was it Munkin? Was it Berry? Was it who was there? Was it Rutenberg? Was it it was their scouts. They were there. That's what matters.
Well, and the Browns need a left tackle. Everybody in the world knows it. And I don't care how you have Freeling rated. He's probably, on everybody's board, whether he's a first round, top 10, first round, second round. I don't think he'd be any lower than that at 6'7" and young and athletic as he is. So, yeah, I don't think they'd be foolish to dismiss and just say, well, we're not that into him. When you have no idea if Fano, Malioga, any of those guys are even going to be there, or who you have your heart set on. So,
yep.
I'm sure.
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't read too terrible much into it, other than the Browns were there so that they could get another look at him, and that's the important thing. Otherwise, again, if you want to keep your eye on our tracker, it's in Rumor Central. You got to be a subscriber to the OBR.com, but you can go over to Rumor Central, and Pete's doing it. Pete Smith is updating it. Every time we get a new name on the top 30 list, he is updating it as we move towards the draft. Fred, the last thing that kind of happened that got people talking, if we can't get out of here without talking quarterback for 2 minutes, but Andy Dalton makes his way back to Philly, which is hilarious. But it got some people talking, because with Andy Dalton going back to Philly, it got people talking. Philly has Tanner McKee out there, who has been linked to some interest from the Browns in the past, former Stanford quarterback. But now with Andy Dalton going out there, a lot of people are wondering, could the Browns be in play for Tanner McKee? And Fred, I imagine the answer is going to be pretty much the same as what it is with other quarterbacks. is that the Browns are probably going to be in play if it makes sense for them, if it's reasonable, and if they feel like the guy actually serves a purpose for them, then I would imagine the Browns will be in play on pretty much any quarterback until it becomes unreasonable, right?
Yeah, again, we don't know. They haven't really showed their hand other than they hadn't really. Usually things get leaked. I mean, back even in the Watson trade, that's why Mayfield got so mad because it
Right.
leaked out they were interested in him and he demanded a trade. I haven't heard anything about the Browns going after or inquiring about guys like Geno Smith that you could have had for a 7th-round pick. You know, not that you're interested in him or whoever. Malik Willis. I mean, Malik Willis, I'm not understanding the Dolphins. They go in to get him, and then it looks like they're selling off the whole team. Are they? Why did they go get the quarterback? Because they said, well, they might get one in the draft. Well, it's like, well, why did you go get the quarterback? When you can't really even see what's going on. So I really still don't know what the Browns are doing. If they made a move like that, that would say, okay, they think he can be the starter here. I've said it today that I feel they are just content going into the offseason program and starting the process with what they have. I don't see any quarterback being drafted that would come in as the surefire starter. They might get one, but I don't think they're anointing him as the starter. So that leaves what you have. The only guys out there, if is a trade like this guy you're saying, McKee, Kirk Cousins, would they do something like that? They let Murray move on, Tua move on. There's just Cousins, maybe Richardson, Jameis Winston. I mean, there's not too many options. So I think they're really just build up the offensive line, get some weapons, and see what you have with Shedeur Sanders. That's what it seems to me, full steam ahead.
And Charlie Chuck in the comments said, Tanner McKee, Tyson Bagent, solid backups. Yeah. And that's why I don't care. If they don't, you don't need to go get Tanner McKee. It's not, that will move the needle this much for me.
That's another Kenny Pickett move.
I just don't think quarterback, a lot of areas you can fill with depth piece. We're talking about grabbing some okay depth offensive line pieces or okay depth guys that can play on special teams or whatever. But a quarterback, you don't just put guys in the room to have them in the room. It just does. If you don't think the guy can be I don't know why they would go after McKee other than if they thought he was a player, but I don't see any evidence behind that at all. Again, I agree with you. And all indication is, unless they pull off something weird in the draft, every indication is get ready for Deshaun Watson in training camp, get ready for Shedeur Sanders, and get ready for going into this year. They may pull in a guy. I see people talking about Drew Aller in the comments, maybe later in the draft. I'd be totally cool with that. But I think the Browns want to make sure that they either don't have what they want, or they want to make sure that what's on the roster, maybe not so much Deshaun, but Shedeur, is either a guy that they can continue with into the future or not. And I think they're going to use a year to find that out. And I think they're going to be no worse for the wear for it. Because if he's bad, you're going to have a great draft pick. And if he's good, you got a quarterback. And okay, we're good there. So,
and it's not so much that he's bad. I mean, you just get the year to see and say, okay, he's a very average quarterback, but we could do better, so we will. Or, right, we got a steal here. He's more than serviceable. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, that's why I think it's a waste to have open competition, because then you're putting yourself in a position to have the wrong guy win the competition. And that sounds bad, but that serves no purpose. So I don't know how you handle it. You got to say all the things you're saying, but you're going to have to declare it, I think, at some point.
No, Monken said that he doesn't want it. He doesn't want it to be a long, drawn-out thing. He wants to get his quarterback, and he wants to go. So we'll see what happens there. But again, Keep your eye on things at theobr.com. Get over there. Hold on. Let me put this back up. Hold on. Come on. QR codes. Go ahead and scan that with your phone, the QR code on the screen. That'll take you to the OBR subscription page. You can get subscribed over there. You can keep track of the pre-draft top 30 visits tracker. You can get all the info in Rumor Central. Ask the insiders. You can be part of all that. Read all the great articles from people like my friend Fred Greetham here and more. And then you also hang out with us on Wednesday nights, every Wednesday at 7 o'clock on Inside the Browns Beat. Fred, is there anything I missed for tonight's show?
No, I think those are most of the talking points I had. Was just we touched on the quarterback a little bit there, and you're going to see him fill a few more holes, but now it's full steam ahead to the draft.
Yep.
It's less. What is it? It's coming up this week. It'll be less than a month. So
yeah, we're about a month.
We'll really be able to, because I think that's really, those first 3 or 4 picks or a trade or whatever they do have a chance to really help this organization. If you could hit on the first 3 picks like you did last year, and come out of that with some real substance that can help you immediately. That's what you're looking for is, so whoever's the quarterback, you can really evaluate them because they've got the weapons, they've got the line, the protection, whether it's this guy or the guy you get for the future.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great way to end it, Fred. This has been another great edition of Inside the Browns Beat, and I'm taking that from you guys because you are really nice in the comments, and we love you. Turtle75, Fumble13, Pat Shea, Chris, all you guys in the comments were great. Had a great time looking at all the comments, getting some of you guys involved into the show. We appreciate you being a part of our show, not just coming and watching, but actually participating. We love that. That's going to do it for Inside the Browns Beat. Remember to come back at 9 o'clock. You got a little bit less than an hour. Come back, hang out. It's Garage Beers time. We're talking Blue Jackets, Browns, World Baseball Classic, March Madness. We're going to talk about all of it on Garage Beers. So grab a cold beer. Come back and join us right here on the OBR streaming network at 9 o'clock for a little bit of fun. But that's going to do it for our show here tonight on Inside the Browns Beat. A big thank you to the OBR. A big thank you to you, Fred, for hanging out with me tonight. And a big thank you to all of you that joined us. We'll be back next week, same time, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Until then, though, as always, go Browns.